Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating sequence from the Gospel of Mark. It's a series of 4 confrontations, and each one builds on the last, creating this powerful case for a totally new kind of authority. So before we jump into the text, let's just start with that big question right there. Think about it. What really gives someone authority? Is it just because things have always been done a certain way? Is it about power? This is the exact tension we're going to explore today. So here's our game plan. We'll set the scene, and then we're going to walk through 4 conflicts that just keep escalating. It starts with a radical claim about sin, then a pretty scandalous dinner party, a big debate over tradition, and finally a direct challenge to sacred law. Then we'll tie it all together. Okay, so our story kicks off in Capernaum. You gotta picture this bustling town right by the Sea of Galilee. A teacher named Jesus shows up, and pretty soon he's drawing these huge crowds. But, not everyone is a fan. His whole approach is starting to cause some serious friction with the established religious leaders. And this, right here, is the heart of the whole problem. The religious teachers, the scribes, the Pharisees, they operate on an authority that comes from tradition, from established law. And now this new guy, Jesus, is acting on a totally different authority. And they're basically asking, who do you think you are? Where do you get the right? And that tension is about to boil over. So the first showdown, it doesn't start with some big public argument. It begins with something quiet, but unbelievably radical. A claim about something nobody can even see, the forgiveness of sins. The scene is just wild. Imagine a house so jam-packed with people trying to hear Jesus that you literally can't get in the door. But these 4 friends are carrying a paralyzed man on a mat, and they are not giving up. They are so determined. They climb up on the roof, start digging a hole right through it, and lower their friend down. Can you imagine? That's some serious faith right there. So Jesus sees this incredible act of faith, and he doesn't immediately heal the man's body. Instead, he says, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now, to the teachers of the law who are just sitting there, this was like an explosion. It sounded like blasphemy, because in their world, only God had the authority to forgive sins. Who did this guy think he was? Jesus, of course, knows exactly what they're thinking, and he hits them with this brilliant question. Which is easier, he asks, to say, "Your sins are forgiven," or to say, "Get up and walk"? Obviously, it's easier to say your sins are forgiven. There's no way to prove it, right? But then he goes and does the visibly impossible thing. He heals the man. He's essentially saying, see, the fact that I can do the thing you can see is proof that I have the authority to do the thing you can't. The physical healing becomes the evidence of his spiritual authority. Okay, so the first challenge was a spiritual one. But the conflict doesn't stay in that lane. Oh no. It quickly spills out into the social world, and it's about to get very public and very messy. Now, to us today, this might just sound like a dinner party, but back then, whoa, this was a massive scandal. Tax collectors worked for Rome, the occupying enemy, and everybody saw them as traitors and thieves. And sinners was the catch-all term for people who just didn't follow the religious rules. So for a respected teacher to hang out with them, let alone share a meal in their home, which was a huge sign of acceptance, it was just unthinkable. And when the religious leaders challenge him on it, Jesus comes back with this powerful analogy. He just completely reframes his entire mission. He's not here to just hang out with the people who are already considered righteous. No, his purpose, his authority, is like a doctor's. You go where the sickness is. He's claiming the authority to ignore social rules when human need is at stake. So the conflict ramps up again. Now it's not just about who Jesus eats with, but about directly challenging a core religious practice that everybody followed. This time, the fight is over fasting. So the accusation is pretty simple. The disciples of the Pharisees and even the followers of the famous John the Baptist, they all fast. It was a major sign of being pious and devoted. But Jesus' disciples, nope, they're not doing it. They're breaking with a really important tradition. So Jesus replies with these 3 incredible metaphors. First, he says his presence is like a wedding feast. It's a time to celebrate, not to be gloomy and fast. Then he gets even more radical. He says you can't patch an old worn-out coat with a new piece of cloth. You'll just make the tear worse. And his message is like new wine. It's so alive, so expansive, that you can't pour it into old, brittle wineskins. The old structures just can't contain it. It needs something totally new. And that brings us to the climax of this whole series. The challenge now goes beyond social norms and traditions, all the way to the heart of sacred law, the Sabbath. This is the biggest, most direct confrontation yet. The scene itself is really simple. Jesus and his disciples are walking. They're hungry, so they start picking some grain to eat. But for the Pharisees, this was a huge deal. It counted as work, and that was a clear violation of the Sabbath, one of the 10 Commandments. I mean, observing the Sabbath was a cornerstone of their entire religious identity. This wasn't a small thing to them. Jesus' response here is completely revolutionary. He just flips the whole purpose of the law upside down. The thinking had always been that people were supposed to serve the law, to follow the rule no matter what. Jesus says, no, you've got it backwards. The rule was created to serve and help people. So a basic human need, like hunger, actually takes priority over the rigid rule. And then he delivers the final, ultimate claim. He says if the Sabbath was made for people, and he is the Son of Man, then he has authority over the Sabbath itself. He's not just reinterpreting the law anymore. He's claiming to be the authority behind the law. This is the absolute peak of the conflict. So what do we make of all this? When you put it all together, you see these 4 stories aren't just random arguments. They are a step-by-step unveiling of a completely new kind of authority, one that isn't based on tradition or power, but on something else entirely. Let's just connect the dots. First, he claimed authority over the spiritual world of sin. Then he claimed authority over social rules. After that, authority over religious rituals. And finally, authority over sacred law itself. And in every single case, the guiding principle is the same. Authority is meant to heal, to restore, and to put people first. It's an authority rooted in compassion. And that's what this all leaves us with, this really provocative question. This ancient conflict forces us to ask ourselves where we draw that line. In our own lives, in our communities, in our institutions. When are rules there to serve us? And when do we end up just serving the rules? It's a question about the true nature of authority. And it's as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.